All right, so let's keep talking about parks and preserves here. Again, roughly 12% of the Earth's land is in a park or protected status, but is it truly enforced is a big challenge, especially in developing countries. So, they have lots of stuff under protected status, but if you don't have the resources to enforce it, it's meaningless. Again, levels. Ecological reserves, wilderness areas, little or no use of them. National parks, a low use to the entire facility. You can obviously go to Yellowstone, but you don't see the vast majority of that park. That's not allowed. Natural monuments, archaeological sites, Cahokia Mounds, Dixon Mounds, etc. Low to medium use. We want the public to become aware of this, to be educated and learn about it. When we get into things like habitat and wildlife management areas, this is where we're going to get medium amount of use. So yeah, Panther Creek, Jim Edgar Panther Creek Park up in Chandlerville. Go hunt, go fish, go camping, go hiking. A lot more use there. They want people there. And then the parks, protected areas, etc., that have the highest usage are things we call cultural or scenic landscapes, these recreational areas. These often have medium to high levels of use. So the goal is to get the public behind it, to say, oh, wow, let's put money towards this protected area. You got to let people use it if they're going to support it. But that's the challenge is you use it, do you love it to death? So when we look at global, worldwide parks protected areas, they've increased for the last 80, 90, we could go over a course of 100 plus years. The number of parks, protected areas, the number of sites have increased, the amount of land under protection has increased continuously. Even in the oceans, marine protected areas, we see large sections of the ocean that are considered marine protected areas, MPAs. This is great, but is it just because it's protected on paper doesn't mean it's truly enforced and protected. So that's why we say parks aren't necessarily safe. Sometimes they're overused. They're loved to death. Oh, wow, let's go there, and people go all the time, and that's great, but then they leave trash and the ecological footprint. Think about camping. If you're burning a fire, well, where are you getting your wood from? And then the scar that the fire produces on the ground, it burns the ground and destroys the soil. Nothing will grow there, or it'll take years for that to recover, depending on how severe the fire scar is. So it's great to have them protected, but it doesn't mean everything's good. The paper parks thing is a huge problem. That's just, yeah, we got all these acres under protection, but if there's no enforcement, there's no ranger, there's nobody watching it, people do whatever they want. You're going to see this in this area. You travel to other countries, you'll see it. I see it in Belize. There's a beautiful place called Five Blues National Park. It's a national park. Yet there's no rangers, there's no protection, there's no money, and the local farmers that border the park are actually farming inside the park boundaries now. Nobody's going to tell them to stop. Nobody's going to enforce it. There's just the resources aren't there. In the U.S., here's a problem. National monuments, 13, if not more at this point, national monuments have been opened up to gas and oil drilling. Let's go drill the Grand Tetons. Let's go drill Theodore Roosevelt Park. Let's go drill the Indiana Dunes along Lake Michigan. So what kind of protection do you have? It's a national park, national monument, and now our administration, the government, has allowed oil companies to go in and explore them and drill them. So imagine, look down in Florida, the Everglades. Imagine drilling for oil in the Everglades. What kind of ecological damage will that cause? But depending upon the administration and the viewpoints and public support, because the public's behind this, pro and con, that's allowable, legally allowable. So if an oil company goes into the Everglades, drills, destroys it, decreases the biodiversity, we can't scream that they broke the law, because the laws are changed to allow things like this. So big challenges for parks. Don't assume just because it's a park, everything's fine. So, all right, now globally, there are conservation strategies that world organizations are trying to achieve as a collective unit. So world conservation strategies fall under kind of three categories or three goals when we're dealing with conservation. So goal number one, they want to maintain essential ecological processes / services. What does the ecosystem do? What does that biome do? And let's try to make sure we maintain it. So why are we concerned about the rainforest? Because of what the rainforest does. The ecological services of the rainforest benefit the entire planet. It's why the global society is concerned about this, because it will impact us globally. All right, number two. Oops. Let's preserve genetic diversity. Modern corn originated from this plant called teosinte. We need to preserve teosinte. We need to preserve native species so we can use that genetic diversity in the future. Maybe we pull genes from it. Maybe we domesticate new crops. If our crops right now aren't successful in the future, we need to come up with new genetic diversity. If we eliminate that or lose that, we are really, really rolling some significant dice. You're putting all of your, as I say, the eggs in one basket to go, this corn crop is going to be the end all for the rest of human life. That is not a smart thing to do, because we know diseases, pests, things that will destroy our corn crop will continue to change and evolve. We have to have new genetic diversity. That's a major, major factor and a big reason why we need conservation, especially on a global level. All right, and then the utilization of that resource, of that park, of that whatever preserve, it's sustainable. Don't overharvest. Take what you need, keep enough for the next generation. That's a huge, huge factor. Sustainable usage of those resources. Again, at the state level versus the country level versus the global level, these things are all challenging to work with. You know, we could be sustainable at the state level, but is that sustainable at a countrywide level or a global level? Kind of depends on what resource you're looking at that you're taking from that biome, whether it's from the grasslands or from the forests or whatever you're talking about. So it is a global idea here. We can bring it down to a local level, though, and still use the same main objectives when we talk about conservation plans and restoration work at a local level. All right, so let's get out of or jump off the land and let's go into the ocean and look at some things with marine ecosystems. This should be concerning for everyone. Say, what's going on globally with marine ecosystems? Now, global fish stocks are depleting. They're going down and going down because overharvesting, overconsumption, tragedy of the commons. What is being encouraged and trying to be pushed is that you take nearshore territory and turn it into a refuge for marine life, a no-take zone, protected area. That allows the fish populations to rebuild in those protected areas, and then the surplus fish spread out and go outside of the protected areas and now get into the areas where we can commercially harvest them. But you got to have the breeding grounds. You have to have the habitat and the space for those species to reproduce. I mean, the great thing about a lot of fish, they produce a lot. Depends on the species, but they can have hundreds to thousands of babies. And if we took some pressure off of them for a generation or 2 generations of fish, we could rebuild the populations. The problem is we just keep the pressure on and we never give them a chance to rebuild. 90% of our coral reefs globally are threatened. Climate change is a major, major problem. Rising temperatures, ocean acidification, fishing practices, coral mining, sediment runoff. I mean, there's just a laundry list of things beating up the coral reefs. And concern is they're going to be gone. We're finding ways to restore, rebuild, repair, but the reefs are under significant stress here. All right, so now here's a neat thing. Globally, we have marine protected areas, MPAs, that cover about 6% of the ocean. So we're trying to get it up to 10 by the year 2020, and then can we get it to 30% by 2030? If governments and countries can come together and have agreements and work collaboratively, it's possible. That allows the ocean time to recover. It allows the ocean a chance to rebuild the populations, so then we can continue to sustainably harvest from the ocean. Here's what Belize looks like because of the work I do down there. I track and monitor and follow this. So this is the marine ecosystem on the coast of Belize. And what we can see is in some areas, we got some great protected areas. All right, so if we go by color, the red in this map, the red color indicates no-take zone. So protected, you can't go in here and take fish out of these areas here. These are no-take zones. This is the area where Tobacco Key is at, down in this area here. Tobacco Key itself sitting in this larger zone, but there's a no-take zone right there, right in the area where Tobacco Key sits. That's the island that we go to for the marine biology course. Yellow is kind of this management zone. There's very little management zone in Belize. There's one up here, sections up here. And then the blue is a multi-use zone. So if you're in the blue zone, you can harvest during selective parts of the year. We can get conch and fish and this and that throughout different parts of the year. But the idea here is that if you go into these red zones, you can't touch a fish. You can't collect conch or lobster or anything. Those are the refuges for those species to allow them to rebuild their populations. And then those populations flow out of the protected areas and restock the surrounding reef areas. It is successful, but the challenge here is imagine setting up this no-take zone and telling somebody who's been fishing that area for the last 40 years, sorry, today you can't fish here anymore. So Belize struggled with that. And the way they worked with the community is they grandfathered people in and said, you know what, if you've been fishing here for so many years, you can continue to fish, but the next generation has to respect the no-take zone laws. So it decreased pressure, and it made most people fairly happy because they could understand that. But just to put up a line of buoys and say nobody gets to go in here anymore, not realistic and practical at all. So you have to recognize the people and how they're going to be impacted when we set up these parks. Are you displacing people out of their home to set up a park? That's going to make some people pretty mad, and you're going to have a lot of opposition to that. So what we'll look at in the next lecture, last one here, will be conservation and economic development. How do we make money off of these parks and keep it sustainable.